So, okay, so let's take that piecemeal. I mean, I think in terms of who it's serving, I think it's clear by virtue of what the Democratic Party has done with the last few years in power, who it's serving. You look at, for example, let's take the baseline, the first, Trump administration, for example, when Trump was in office, their major legislative achievement was a tax cut that overwhelmingly favored millionaires and billionaires. That's what they did with their political capital. It was one major piece of legislation where, overwhelmingly the benefits were felt by the ultra rich. Look at what the Democrats did with their short time in power. With their 2 years in the majority in Congress, it was the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS Act, PACT Act, Infrastructure Law, the Gun Safety Bill, Reauthorizing Violence Against Women Act. So I think it goes to show by virtue of actions and not just what people are saying, what the priority is. And then you look at, more recently, we've seen insulin capped at $35, inhalers capped at $35, junk fees eliminated from banks, airlines. You have to immediately give what when a flight is canceled, for example, refunds are given immediately. So these are things that impact regular people. Are they not? Are they as sexy as like the major news items that we usually hear about? No. Is that why we actually don't hear about most of this stuff? Of course, but I think when you look at what's actually happening, this little stuff on a day-by-day basis, it becomes overwhelmingly clear who the Democrats are working for.
The problem is you just laid out a message that's much more effective than your candidates.
And look, that, I think the independent media space is important for that reason. I'm able to say what I want in a way that I think is going to be resonant with my audience or resonant with audiences more broadly. I'm not really interested so much in terms of like what candidates are saying. I actually am just more focused on what my messaging is going to be in terms of promoting, the agenda that I want to see put into place.
You want to beat Trump, right?
Do I want to beat Trump, you said?
Yeah.
1,000%.
Do you think Joe Biden is messaging in a way that will create a victory?
Generally, yes. Is there work to be done? Yes. I actually think the biggest thing that's going to harm Donald Trump is Donald Trump himself. I think that he is his own worst enemy. I mean, he goes out there on the stump and he's railing against, what was it, the most recent thing, electrocutions and shark attacks. And then, of course, vows of retaliation and his revenge tour. I mean, that's him kind of showing people who he is and what a second Trump term is going to be. I think in terms of what Biden's doing, it's difficult for the exact reason that I just laid out. Is a lot of the stuff that he's saying is not going to be able to compete with Donald Trump standing up there on the stump and railing against, being a dictator on day one or terminating the Constitution. It's hard to make $35 insulin compete with Donald Trump saying he's going to be a dictator on day one and expecting the news to cover the former.
People are angry. And a lot of the people.
And by the way, to that point, people are angry. And what does Donald Trump use? What does he leverage to help himself the most? He's a demagogue. He tries to get people afraid. I mean, this has been a tactic of the Republican Party and conservatives and right-wing media more broadly for years. I mean, it. When do migrant caravans become a topic of conversation?
True.
Every year, right around September, October, there's a reason that demagoguery works, and there's a reason that they use it over and over and over again. I mean, going back decades, we were talking about the first scapegoats were gay people. Then when it became too popular when gay marriage, for example, became too popular an issue, then they had to move over to trans issues, and just anybody who they can demagogue, who they can scapegoat is what they do because fear is a really potent tactic. It's a really potent tool to wield, especially, against a base that has been groomed to fear exactly whatever they bring forward. I completely agree with you. And that's why I don't really cover this stuff. I don't really delve into culture wars. I mean, like, I've been invited onto some of these right-wing podcasts. I can't even, their names are escaping me. I can't even pull up the names right now, but I've been invited onto the shows, and I don't view myself as being the foil to some of these people because I don't delve into culture wars, because I think that actually is the terrain that they want to fight on, because it's a distraction.
Right.
And when we talk about the actual issues that actually benefit people, it's not what bathroom somebody's walking into. It's not how somebody identifies as. It's not any of this bullshit. It's what are costs for American people? What does healthcare cost? What kind of legislation is being passed? What are our immigration policies? What's happening in the courts right now? Is the rule of law being upheld, for example, in a disparate way between certain defendants and others? Like, I think that's the stuff that is far more important. That's the stuff we should be speaking about. And I think there's a reason that a lot of people want to dig into culture wars and talk about Christmas cups at Starbucks. Well, I can't speak to what their thoughts were, other than the fact that Joe Biden put himself forward over a year ago as a negotiating partner for the right on this issue. I mean, they put together a coalition of Kirsten Sinema, Chris Murphy, and James Lankford, who certainly know avowed liberal on this issue, and they spent months and months and months and months hammering out a deal. Again, that was the most conservative border deal that any Democrat would have considered, and didn't even include any. It was all. There was no comprehensive immigration reform. It was just border security,
right?
All in exchange for aid to Ukraine, by the way, that passed anyway.
Right.
So the fact that they didn't take this up shows that they don't want this issue to be solved. Donald Trump had full control of government when he became president. Why didn't they solve it? Other than just using stopgap measures that were solely predicated on pandemic powers. But there was no comprehensive.
Because the message was enough. Build a wall.
The message was enough, and the message is always going to be enough. And the fact that James Lankford could stand in the well of the Senate and say, if you solve this in an election year, I'll make sure your life is a living hell. That gives the whole game away. So, like, it's hard for any of these Republicans to come forward. And yeah, the border is a tough issue for Democrats, absolutely. But let's not pretend that Republicans don't know that. Let's not pretend that if that issue was solved in accordance with that bill that James Lankford negotiated, that would have actually that would have fixed it, and that would have taken away a potent campaign issue for Republicans. Well, perhaps, but you also have to consider the fact that a big element, just politically speaking, right? Because I think you made absolutely the right point in terms of the morality of all of this. But politically speaking, I think there is a big contingent of the country, and it creates this coalition of people on, those Nikki Haley voters, for example, all the way to folks on the left. A lot of their support for Joe Biden is predicated on their contempt for someone like Donald Trump, and rightfully so. And so I think it's got to be a two-pronged approach. It's not just the fact, for example, that Democrats are better on these issues, whether it's the issue of abortion, whether it's the issue of gun violence, whether it's the issue of healthcare, of climate change, whatever, union membership, whatever it is, Democrats are with the American people on the vast majority of these issues. But it's also the fact that for a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with the Democrats on those issues, for whatever the reason may be, even maybe it's just the fact that political affiliation has become so intertwined with identity these days, and that's enough to stop a lot of lifelong Republicans who may despise Donald Trump from considering voting for Joe Biden, because it's become such a deeply ingrained part of identity. For those people, if you can exacerbate or exploit the points at which Donald Trump is just so disgusting to them, then if that's a tool that's at your disposal, then use it. But I think this does have to be a two-pronged approach, where it's got to be espousing the virtues of what Democrats have done, especially with their limited time in office. I named the legislative achievements, but we have 15 million jobs added. In fact, in my entire lifetime, there has not been a single Republican administration that's created more jobs than a Democrat. There's not been a single Republican administration that's had a better economy than a Democratic administration. So it's exploiting that, but it's also, punching down against Donald Trump, who is the weakest candidate and the most dangerous candidate that we've had in modern American history.
So what does it mean that he's so close to winning again?
I think to go back to a media critique, I mean, look, you have half of the country who consumes media. Our media ecosystems have become so bifurcated right now, and I'm in that. I'm part of the left-wing media ecosystem. The amount of people who watch me on the right is dwindling, if there are any. But I think the fact that we live in two alternate universes of reality. I mean, you heard Kellyanne Conway debut this concept of alternative facts. That's what they live every day. How many people in right-wing media have heard the fact that this border deal that was negotiated by James Lankford himself? How many know that the reason that it wasn't adopted was because Donald Trump sent out his clarion call for Republicans to attack it, because he would rather have the issue as opposed to the solution? Information, facts don't reach people in the same way that they used to. And I think so long as you have this this hermetically sealed bubble protecting people from reality, protecting people from facts. They're never going to get the full picture. And they're going to walk away from Donald Trump thinking, they're going to walk away from the day's news thinking that Donald Trump has done no wrong, that, for example, he's the victim of some political persecution, even though it was a jury of 12 New Yorkers who found him guilty on all 34 criminal counts. They're going to think that he's some messiah who should be likened to Jesus Christ, even though, again, the issue at hand in this trial was the fact that he falsified business records related to a hush money payout for an affair he paid for a hush money payout for to a porn star he paid while his wife was at home with their infant son. I mean, like, none of this information is actually going to reach people, and I think that's the fatal flaw with our media these days. No, it's not. I don't think that's on the Democrats for keeping the ticket the way it is. Look, regardless of who it is, it could be you could put Mother Teresa in. That person is going to be vilified the second that Republicans get their hands on them. I mean, think about what happens as soon as Democrats gain some modicum of prominence, Republicans attack. I mean, from Hillary Clinton to remember what Kevin McCarthy said about Hillary Clinton back, I think in 2015, I believe it was, where the whole point of the Benghazi Select Committee was to hurt Hillary Clinton's poll numbers. As soon as they see an opening where a Democrat has some national prominence, they move to define them immediately. So it doesn't matter whether it's, and you also know too that Hillary Clinton was immensely popular before she became the Democratic nominee for president. So Republicans will attack regardless of who it is. There is no person too virtuous. I mean, you couldn't get a person more virtuous than Barack Obama. Look how he was attacked. You remember all of these bogus scandals, from the color suit he wore to the type of mustard he ate. There is no person they won't attack. So we can't put this on Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, because who's going to go in that Republicans are going to be happy with, first of all? And
well, it's not the Republicans, though. It's the independents. I think Kamala Harris scares off independents.
Kamala Harris is right now engaged in a nationwide tour talking to young people primarily about the issue of abortion. I think that there's no better thing that she could be doing right now than kind of discussing the one issue that has Republicans on their heels, unlike any other issue.
Yeah, she shouldn't define it that way, though. And I know she doesn't. I'm just telling you as a talking point. It's not abortion. It's reproductive rights. Because once the government says they have the ability to legislate how you control your own body, abortion is just one manifestation of that. You don't know where that legal ability can take them. And I think that has been a triggering mechanism. Look, in my family, right, I have no excuse when it comes to recognizing feminine strength, right? My mother was always the center of the family. She's the only person who could make my father shut up. I got 3 sisters that are without question the most qualified people in the Cuomo family. It's just the men talk a lot. The women are far superior. I got 2 daughters. I got a wife. I'm surrounded by strong women on my team. This issue has been a game changer. And the only reason it's quiet is because the right doesn't want to talk about it, and the left, once again, doesn't tell its story well enough. This is not just abortion. We don't know what this ruling means in terms of what a state can now say about a woman's body. Not a man's body, a woman's body. And that is powerful. Reproductive rights is the first time we've seen a right taken away. And that is very impressive to a lot of women if you make the case.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people are. I mean, I think the point that it's not just abortion rights. It's Republicans have tried to attack even the right to interstate travel, and we're seeing a lot of these anecdotal pieces of evidence come forward. I mean, there was a young girl in Mississippi, 12 years old, who was raped. Her parents didn't know if she would qualify for the state's exemption to the abortion ban. Even if they did qualify, it's unlikely any doctor would have actually performed the procedure, given the high penalties for doing so. And so this girl's in 7th grade and she has an 8-month-old child. We saw a similar situation in Ohio. A 10-year-old girl was raped, had to consider traveling to Indiana. And in Texas, there was an instance where a young woman had a fetus with trisomy 18, which is a fatal genetic condition, couldn't get abortion care in Texas, and because Ken Paxton decided to appeal the exemption up to the Texas Supreme Court, so that was blocked. I mean, the issue, the examples, just there is no end to them, and I think it's proven especially potent. And there's a reason that Republicans who will weigh in on anything, I mean, there is no Starbucks cup they won't weigh in on, have been especially quiet on this issue. This is where we're at. Joe Biden, is the nominee. There is no stepping away from this. So at this point, it's just a matter of moving forward and, to your earlier point, telling our story.
Do you think he should be out there more?
I do. I think he should be out there more because if you look at the instances where he has been out there, so much of the time where he's not out there creates this vacuum that is then filled with Republicans claiming that, he's in the throes of cognitive decline, that he doesn't know his own name, that he can't tie his shoes, that he doesn't know what day of the week it is. And then we have these instances few and far in between, where he goes up at the State of the Union, for example, and embarrasses Republicans, or has these speeches like the one he did at D-Day, where he just does a stellar job. And even you have, folks in the Reagan administration that are saying like, this is you can liken his speech at D-Day to that. And so in the instances where he does come out, it reminds people, if but for a fleeting moment, that he is more than capable of doing the job, as if his resume alone and the accomplishments that the administration has isn't enough, but reminds people that he can do the job. And I think that he should be going out there more, not just because it's a reminder to people, but because then it makes any moment, minor flubs, and it's Joe Biden we're talking about here, so there will be flubs.
Yeah, he was always a gaffe master. Always.
Yeah, I think in terms of the importance of this debate, I think the same thing that happened in all of the other instances where Joe Biden's about to go up against Donald Trump, or just go up at all and do anything, is going to come into play. I mean, this is what I just spoke about. Republicans are already doing their level best to lower expectations for Biden by, again, claiming that he's in the throes of cognitive decline, that really they're helping level set expectations for Biden better than even Trump can. So I'm not worried about how he's going to perform. I've also seen Donald Trump lately. I mean, this guy has been railing against, he thinks he's running against Barack Obama. He thinks that World War II hasn't happened yet. He thinks that you need ID to buy bread. He's complaining about windmills, toilet pressure. He's sharks, electrocutions. I mean, like if you transpose what Donald Trump is saying onto Joe Biden, think about what Fox News would be saying about Joe Biden. They would be trying to check him into a mental institution.
I know, but you can't play their game, though.
And that's why I think it's important. We're not focused on I think the whole, look, there's a reason that I focus most of my energy on YouTube. It's because that's where the biggest audience is. I don't really tweet that much, because I understand that Twitter is really for soft influence. That's where the reporters are. But my focus is on persuasion with people more broadly. I mean, on my YouTube channel, I've got almost 3 million subscribers. I reach anywhere from 75 to 95 million people a month. That's where my energy is, because that's where I think the vast majority of people who are able to be persuaded is, or people who can listen to my message and then bring that message out as tribunes, for example, to their circles and and spread the gospel that way. But I think our time has to be spent as effectively and efficiently as possible. It's not reaching those people. It's not reaching the conspiracy theorists. You can spend so much time trying to deal with those people. Those people are not in the coalition that I'm working on right now. My focus right now is just kind of reaching Americans more broadly and just focusing on the people who are actually kind of ripe for the taking, in terms of, these are soft Republican voters, these are independents, these are Republicans these are Democrats, for example, who may be deciding between Joe Biden and the couch. That's my focus in all of it. I think that the fact that the channel has grown, and there's other channels as well who've grown pretty quickly. I think the fact that there has been such growth is a testament to the hunger there was on the left for some type of rebuttal to the deluge of bullshit that's kind of proliferating on the right. And so I think just right there, the fact that people are tuning into this stuff, so much of what I hear from people online is like, you watch the news, and because there's such an emphasis on both sidesism, people start to feel like they're losing their minds, in the sense that, like, how many Trump supporters in diners who think that Democrats are a baby-eating cabal are there? And you're like, am I alone here? Like, where is everybody just focusing on common sense? And so I think what this progressive media ecosystem, aside from the mainstream media, because I think the mainstream media has for so long allowed the right to be their assignment editors, basically. I mean, I think there were something like 69 front page New York Times stories about Hillary's emails. And then when Ivanka Trump did virtually the same thing, it came and went like a fart in a hurricane. So it's clear that the media allows the right to be their assignment editors. And so this is just like kind of a breath of fresh air to see folks on the left in a growing progressive media ecosystem be able to reach people and say, like, yeah, Donald Trump is a criminal. Look what he's done, and not have to equivocate it with 10 things about how the left is just as bad, or how Joe Biden's age is somehow equivalent to Donald Trump being a convicted felon, also facing indictment in 3 other trials that include, among other things, blocking certification of a free and fair election. Donald Trump did something that I think 99% of Americans who are espousing some degree of common sense would recognize is worse than what Nixon did. I mean, Nixon had people burglarize the DNC. What Trump did was stop a free and fair election, stop the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in over 200 years in our country's history. And the fact that Nixon was excommunicated, but that not only Donald Trump wasn't excommunicated, but that the rest of his party is continuing to rally around him is a testament to the fact that when you have a media who is just running apologia for you nonstop, 24 hours a day, it gives you that backing that you need to continue powering through. There is nothing that Donald Trump could do right now that his pals over at Fox, at Newsmax, at OAN, and even in the halls of Congress and in the Senate, that they wouldn't back him up and say that what he did was totally fine.
True. But I'll tell you what would change that. You get rid of the party's grip over state primaries, so you don't have to worry about getting primaried by a psycho and losing because of how few people come out, so that you get magnified minorities there. Then they'd stop, because people wouldn't have to play the game anymore to get through a primary. And the electeds would stop giving such cover to Donald Trump because they're afraid that he'll beat him in primaries, which he can. But even now, this analysis is not the best path for the Democrat win. The best analysis for the Democrat win is, if it can be mustered, is, listen, you give me control of Congress. You give us, not me, you give us control of Congress. I'm telling you right now, we're going to give the Dreamers what they deserve, which everybody in this country believes they need, okay? I'm going to give CBP everything they want to make the border as safe and the ability to process the way they never have before. I'm going to do that. And then you have to have 2 other initiatives that are both blanket positives, okay? Have nothing to do with stopping anybody from anything. One, in my opinion, would be, I'm going to revitalize the artisan. It's an extension of infrastructure. I'm going to revitalize the artisan class in this country. It's what's hurt our economy the most. Innovation is a reality. AI is a reality. It's going to affect production, and that's progress, and that's how it is. But we are down tradespeople, and they are not hacks. These are the people that build the country, that keep it running, that will always need. You won't always need a lawyer. You'll always need someone who can build your house. And I'm going to restore that and take away the bias in financing from higher education that they don't deserve and they can't deliver on. And then you pick another one, probably something to do with women and reproductive rights. And I will do this. I will make it better. You give me control, and I will stop their game of scaring us all to death. And I will work towards giving us a better life. That's how you beat them, by getting away of the who's worse and which is worse. Because I don't think you can win that fight. I'll be honest with you. All you're doing is making their negatives less impressive by allowing them to be offset.
I would tend to agree with that. I think that I understand what you're saying in terms of like playing on their terrain. They revel in demagoguery and negative, exploiting the negatives. And I think that, by virtue of doing that, look, there are obviously benefits to doing that, electorally speaking, politically speaking. But I think overall, kind of getting in the mud on the negatives is ultimately going to redound to Republicans' benefit.
If I'm angry, I'm voting for them. If I've got hope in this country, I'm voting for you. And now people will say, no, that's not true. If you have hope, you're voting for Trump. That's not true. Trump isn't selling hope. Trump's selling desperation. Trump's selling everything's so fucked that if I don't get in there, who knows how bad it gets. But then he's also telling them that he'll be the guy who makes it even worse.
I mean, I would tend to disagree, but that's okay. And I think that, to your point about Biden, I think him being out on whether it's the debate stage or him doing the speeches like he's done, or him getting out there more in the independent media space or regular media space, although I think that that's probably less important, I think is ultimately gonna help.
He's got to do more
interviews.
interviews. He's got to do candid interviews. He's got to show people him living his life. They won't even put him on my show. I think that it's probably some kind of misplaced sense of grievance that because the Democrats went bad on my brother, that I am carrying some, that I'm carrying some grudge.
Animus.
But I mean, it's so obvious from my coverage. I'm in trouble with the right all the time.
Just to try to glean how effective, some mailer was in the broader scheme of all of the other, bombardment of messaging out there. I can put out a video immediately. I can read the comments. I can see the views. I can see, who is a potent messenger. I can see what message actually works, what message doesn't really work in terms of getting people rallied around, in terms of getting people to click on something. I mean, we have this insane luxury online to be able to reach people instantly and get that instant feedback, and then use that message moving forward and continue to hone it, and figure out what's going to be most effective as we then try to go to the broader electorate and reach independents and see what's an effective message for them.